Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Mayor Yemi. We're so proud to work closely together with Colorado Springs to be your host here today. I hope that my fellow governors and our guests do get out to explore some of what the city has to offer. Thank you all for being here. To my fellow governors, I know we all have very busy schedules as governors. We're trying to make this time as impactful as possible. With our panelists, we'll have plenty of opportunity for us to ask questions and interact with Secretary McMahon and with Mark Cuban in a moment. You know, it's been a great honor to serve as NGA chair. I couldn't be more excited that we will be talking about something that concerns all of us, and that's Let's Get Ready, Educating All Americans for Success. You should all have copies of that. Part of what we're focused on is we write on the title, Roadmap for Governors. It's really about tools that we can use as governors who are major funders of education, right? As governors, we don't run the schools, but we fund the schools. And that puts us in a unique position to demand better outcomes. Thank you, Vice Chair Stitt, for your partnership and support throughout the year, in your leadership in advancing education in Oklahoma. And I also want to thank the broad coalition of partners, many of them are in this room, that helped inform this important initiative. 1 year ago, we kicked off the Let's Get Ready initiative to really answer a question that's top of mind for governors and for states and for parents. How can we better set our students and our economy up for success? And for too long, our definition of readiness has been too narrow, focused on academic indicators, and of course, 2 points on that. Academic indicators are important. We do measure them, and we certainly don't do well enough, and we know that, and we need to do better in math and reading. But we also know that academic indicators just scratch the surface of what students need to know, to do, and to be successful in life. We heard from educators and students and employers, job seekers about how it's time to innovate and rethink and build future-ready learners. With this in mind, we set out with a focus on data and measurement so that we have the tools as governors to better measure what's working, share best practices, drive stronger outcomes, and of course, most importantly, sometimes the most difficult, to identify and change what isn't working. Education is the best investment we can make in the future of our states, but we also know that sometimes we make poor investments. And by taking a close look at how we can maximize our return on investment in education, just like we do in any other area, we can achieve better outcomes. And we've toured schools and heard from experts in New York, in Las Vegas, in Vancouver, virtually, people that are leading the way to fill the gaps for students and help every child succeed. We've dived deep into the data. And just as importantly, we identified areas of data that we don't have yet that are important to evaluating success. We also saw time and time again the measurement mismatch that celebrates what we measure from what we need for success in the economy and at the individual level. We took lessons and best practices and data gathered throughout this process to compile a toolkit for governors that I'm proud to unveil today. There are really four main areas that we identified what we need to measure to make sure that what we're doing in education works. Academic foundations, I mentioned that. Of course, kids need to read and write. And we need to do better. We already measure it. Sure, we can measure it better, but we measure it fairly effectively. We don't do well enough. We also know that that alone is not enough for success. The next key area is workforce preparedness. And as I talk to our governors individually, I know that each of you are doing exciting things in this area, whether it's with your school districts, with your community colleges. But what we don't have is a universal readiness indicator to measure that success. And like in a lot of things in education, you create incentives and you generally get what you measure. And we want to make sure that we are documenting what works for workforce preparedness, certificates, certifications, what allows kids to get a good job right out of high school in addition to a diploma. Civic engagement. We need to make sure, building upon the success of Governor Cox's initiative on Disagree Better, we need to make sure that our students are equipped with the civic tools to be able to understand how to disagree better and also work within our government systems to achieve better outcomes for themselves and their families. And finally, lifelong well-being, building on the initiative of Governor Murphy and Tammy Murphy, making sure we're talking about mental health and behavioral health needs to make sure that people don't just know how to read and write, but are happy and productive and able to deal with the mental health issues they face. So again, we've talked as a group, NGA, about what we need to do in some of these areas. A piece of civic engagement, it's broader than Disagree Better, but civic engagement, lifelong well-being. But what we hope to add with this is better ways to measure the outcomes in those areas about whether we are succeeding or not. With these key pillars, this roadmap provides a tangible, action-oriented steps that governors can take to make readiness and opportunity the norm for students across our country. These steps are, number one, define a clear vision for student readiness and assess how your state is measuring it, right? Hopefully we all do. I think we all do the academic foundations piece, and we know we need to do better, but what are we doing in those other three? Eliminate silos across government that slow progress. I issued an executive order just a month or two ago to really bring together the different silos on the state side from our Department of Labor and Employment and Economic Development, community colleges, K-12, workforce readiness. Really, this shouldn't matter to the learner. They need to be able to access this. We need to make the system seamless and work for the learner rather than for your bureaucrats. Build systems and infrastructure to measure outcomes. You need to make sure that you're actually doing that in a scientifically valid and thoughtful way. Maintain focus on outcomes that drives transparency and accountability with the public dashboard. Whether you choose to use carrots or sticks, whether you're just using the market force of parents choosing what schools to send, or whether you add funding consequences to it. Having that dashboard and driving transparency and accountability is absolutely critical. In fact, one of our guests in the room, I have two former Colorado governors in the room. We have Governor Roy Romer, who's a former NGA chair. Under him, we established school choice across Colorado, charter schools in Colorado. We also have Governor Bill Owens, who created our state accountability system, since been adapted and improved with regard to the academic metrics. And I want to thank my predecessors for that work that we were able to build upon and are building upon. And finally, consider a more effective role in federal education. And we're going to have a conversation with the Secretary in a moment. I'm sure you have some questions for her. But as we have a chance to rethink what role the federal government should play, we should engage about what would lead to better student outcomes and how the federal government can be a partner in achieving those goals. Now, we could spend the rest of the convening diving into each of these areas. If it was up to entirely me, we would. I'd spend an hour on each area. That's 5 hours. But we do have to move it along, and I totally get that. And this initiative is fundamentally a call for governors to strive and work for better outcomes. I hope that all of you in your governor's offices have a dedicated K-12 person and a dedicated higher ed and workforce readiness person, some constellation of both. We do. It certainly starts with your capacity as governors. So if you only have kind of one global education, I'd encourage you to expand capacity in that area in your governor's office too, because none of these things are easy. And they require gubernatorial leadership. And we know that we need our staff to be able to effectively do that. But we're really seeking to bring together educators and employers. I want to thank, again, many of the great folks who supported this work, the Rakes Foundation, the Hewlett Foundation, Strada Education Foundation. Thanks to them, NGA is kicking off a new technical effort to provide support for at least 5 governors to implement the roadmap action items. Stay tuned for that. And we're hoping if we get more than 5, we can accommodate that. But certainly 5, and frankly, I'm hoping that more of you want to do this. This is the public dashboard piece, the accountability piece. Governors are uniquely positioned to find this path forward. If not us, then who? That's a question we need to ask ourselves every day. Not only the future of our young people and opportunity and this great promise that this nation offers relies on it, but so too the collective success of our economy and prosperity is really the sum of the talents and skills of the American people.